I'm looking forward to this conversation. We've never had a chance to sit down, and there's lots of places we could start, but maybe the obvious place, given that you are sitting behind a screen, and a topic you've been asked about in the past is anonymity. How important is anonymity to you, or is it more about creating theater or a spectacle?
Originally, the idea of being anonymous was a great idea on paper, and then I think that sort of gradually, as we started touring and as we were getting bigger, I've never really felt anonymous. I wasn't even anonymous before Ghost, even though I was in a petite band and my following wasn't big, but I would get recognized at some point by people that I don't know. So yeah. I liked being able to step in and out of recognition.
Yeah.
Even now, when I'm not necessarily hiding my face 100% of the time, I don't think that there's a whole lot that I can do to expose myself in a way that would ever match the amount of exposure that I've gotten in character.
For me, and perhaps for many fans, it's impossible to separate Tobias from Papa or now the Cardinal and the idea or concept and image of Ghost. And it made me wonder about why that element of theater is so important to you. You mentioned you like that separation. So is that creating that theater, is that sort of a motivator for you to get up and perform and to create art?
When I was 3-4 years old and I dressed up like a mixture between Kiss and Alice Cooper and Nikki Sixx and Dee Snider, it's not very far from what I'm doing now. The idea is the same. The inclination to transform from whoever you are that feels maybe not as exciting to something that is exciting. I've always had that. I've never really felt comfortable being in just a t-shirt band. From an art point of view, the experience that I want to convey is based on some sort of over-the-top, supernatural, it's of that nature.
Yeah. You know, at BANGOR we've been making documentaries now for 15 years, and I am the lucky kid that got to meet a lot of the people you just mentioned, Alice, Dee, Kiss, and on and on. And we made a film with Alice called Super Duper Alice Cooper, and I was actually thinking about him. It seems there are parallels emerging
yes.
between the two of you. Do you feel like you're becoming an Alice Cooper-like character?
I do. Absolutely. But essentially, I think that the idea of being a Vincent Furnier at one point and transforming into Alice Cooper, and along the way having that gray zone in between sort of diluted, is something that I've definitely experienced. You need to choose at some point whether or not you're here working, getting people happy, or if you're doing it just for yourself. As much as Alice Cooper is an extension or a part of Vincent Furnier, Cardi, Papas, all that is somewhere in here, there's that. And I do enjoy being able to differentiate between the two characters, myself and whatever he is, even though he gets the applause and even though he gets the attention. It's fine because he's not always very sociable.
And I guess that's the key, right, is, as you know, we talked about in the film, is that if the character starts to take over, there can be risks, I suppose, to that.
Absolutely. And I think that even people that I know who are closer in resemblance between what they look like off stage and what they look on stage, even they are experiencing more of a problem being out and about because people expect them to be closer to their on-stage persona.
It also got me thinking about another band that we've spent time with, which is Iron Maiden. Maiden have long said that Eddie for them was the perfect vessel, right? They could put all of that stuff that they had in themselves in this character Eddie, so they didn't have to be it. I guess there must be an element of that for you as well. You get to put whatever stuff is in Tobias into the Cardinal.
Absolutely. Many times I've referenced different Papas as our Eddie, but he just happened to be singing as well. The idea of interviewing the Cardinal or Papa Emeritus has been off the table.
Yeah.
Because you would never interview Han Solo, right? You'd get an interview with Harrison Ford. Papa Emeritus or Cardinal Copia is our Eddie. You don't interview Eddie. You interview Steve Harris.
Yeah. I'd like to shift gears and talk about another figure that looms large in your music and your imagery, and that's Satan. And I've read about your upbringing and your experiences with family and religion growing up, and I was wondering, what is Satan to you?
I think it's important to differentiate between the biblical Satan and the pop cultural Satan. Even though I am very, very, very fascinated with the religion, in many ways I'm sort of staying in the pop cultural world when it comes to referencing the devil, and especially when I'm talking about my relationship to him, because he appeared in my life through rock music, through films. I've been dressing myself with pentagrams and upside-down crosses ever since I was 11 years old, and was looking at horror films and listening to music about Satan way before that. That's the difference, I think, between musicians born in the 40s that added the devil as a hip thing in 1968, 69 to their musical movement. It was more an addition that they could do as grown-ups, whereas me and a lot of my friends who grew up in black metal bands, with black metal, death metal, and all that, that's part of our blood, basically.
I didn't want to have a conversation with you without having the opportunity to nerd out about metal, at least for a moment.
Let's.
And, a band that is also in this lineage of the satanic panic is, of course, Black Sabbath. I wanted to talk to you about the influences you've taken from Sabbath, because you've taken them from the much less trodden part of the catalog. It's almost heresy in the metal community to say it's not about the first 3 albums, right? I just wanted to hear why you love those records.
Let alone the fact that they're extremely good, well-crafted records. I think that they are brave, and they explored the studio and the techniques, and they explored music in a way that I don't think that they did on the first 3 records. That does not make first 3 records in any way bad. I love Master of Reality. I love Paranoid. I love Black Sabbath, the first one. I fell in love with Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. And it's in the same time when I started playing guitar, I was about 7, 8 years old. And at the time, I was very much in awe of the first 2 Pink Floyd records, Doors, Rolling Stones, but also like a lot of the weirder Stones. And Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath was also like a record that sort of fit very well in there. Like that sort of boundaryless, do whatever you want to within the confines of this 20 minutes you have on this side of this vinyl. The same reason like I love Queen. Their records start one way and just finish another way, and in between there's like up, down, sideways. It's brave. I think that Sabbath gets a lot of accolades and a lot of superlatives for a lot of things, but I think that one thing that they get less of is the credit for being so brave. 20 years from now, I would love to have 6 records that was as diverse as their records to choose from.
You've been asked in the past about the enormous topic of the future of rock. This feeling, I think, in the rock and metal community that, where is it going? Who is carrying the torch forward when eventually the Sabbaths, the Metallicas, the Maidens are all going to have to lay down the axes eventually? Who's going to pick it up? And you've talked about younger bands, but it seems to me that you are that person to some extent.
I think that we could be one band for the future. There needs to be a myriad. There needs to be several, and it will solve itself. I mean, there will be, right now, obviously, the mainstream is dominated by hip-hop, and it wasn't 10 years ago, and 10 years from now, we won't be. everything comes and goes, and there will be a new rock wave.
Speaking of hip hop, you had mentioned that, where we are right now in rock and metal is we're perhaps not doing as good of a job as we should of supporting the next generation like the hip hop community or the hip hop industry is doing.
One of the differences between the rock music from a growth point of view and hip hop is that you get new hip hop acts coming out 2-3 years ago, and they're now like the biggest shit on the planet. The curve, the trajectory is closer to what rock was. Like, look at Maiden. They toured a lot, so I'm not saying that, but their journey from playing their first show in America to headlining Madison Square Garden was just a few years. Mm-hmm. Power Slave, that gigantic tour of Americas, was just 3-4 years into their career. Whereas nowadays, we're still sort of being sometimes mentioned as, oh, you're a new band. It's like 8 years ago, our first record. I know in the greater scheme of rock and roll, 8 years is nothing. We're still total newbies, but 8 years is still, in Metallica world, first record came out 83. We're at the Black Album. In terms of time, is different. Whereas in the past, rock and roll was dictated by teenagers and 20-year-olds. And I think that that's an unavoidable thing, and I think that we need to realize that the future of rock might be dictated by people who are not even 20 years at this point. And I think that I still have a few things that I want to achieve that could be of interest to the rock-loving public. I would love to be part of that in the future. But I can never be the new 20-year-old band.
Yeah. Well, good luck with the journey.
Thank you.
And thank you for your time, Tobias.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.